I'm Sarah Presch, and this is SEO in 2025.
Sarah, what's your number one SEO tip for 2025?
So my number one SEO tip for 2025 is to actually start using psychology to stay ahead in the SERPs. The reason why I'm saying that is because if you don't have any content, you're not going to rank. If you don't have any user experience, you're not going to get any conversions. If you don't have any CRO, you're not going to get any conversions. And in order to understand these and create content that actually, does what you want, you need to understand the basic principles of what drives people to do what they do and, what makes people tick, but actually properly from a psychological perspective in order to get them to do what you want.
And you've also used the term psycho-marketing with me as well. So is psycho-marketing using psychology in marketing?
Yeah. What you'll probably hear, you probably heard of neuromarketing a little bit more than psychomarketing. There's a little bit of a difference between the two. So psychomarketing is using things like social psychology theories and combining them with marketing and using, psychological theories and more general stuff, whereas neuromarketing is really going deep and using like EEGs and neurological, like brain scanning and stuff like that in order to find out how people react. So as I don't do that, definitely psychomarketing is what I tend to use.
Okay, so why is psychology important to maybe understanding the SERPs, for example?
Yeah, I'll be honest. Before I decided to have a midlife crisis and go back and study psychology, I didn't think that psychology had very much to do with SEO, if I'm being completely honest. But having studied the two, separately and having worked in SEO for so long, there are so many different psychological theories that you can take and adapt and use when it comes to marketing, because they're all based on, what motivates people to do what they do, what motivates people to make certain decisions. And it's the same as what we're looking to do as marketers. We want people to go to the website and we want them to do a particular action. And people have these little biases and, well, not little biases, everybody is kind of biased quite a lot. So by understanding things like biases and, why people behave the way they do, we can kind of hack that as SEOs and use it to our advantage.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain degree, it's embracing great marketing principles because 40 years ago, actually, the book, The Psychology Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion was published, Robert Cialdini. And that's a classic book that helps you understand the psychology of potential customers. And you're taking those principles, I guess, and applying it to what happens in SEO.
Exactly, because psychology is, SEO is a form of marketing. And in order to do SEO well, you need to kind of have those foundations of marketing in place to understand where it fits in the greater scheme of marketing and, to get people to, take actions and do what you want. And psychology, actually, like marketing psychology is a massive area in consumer psychology and things like that. And there's so many different principles that you can bring in, and you'll have to adapt them slightly because like the stuff that you learn in a degree is very much geared up for like clinical side of things. But if you adapt it a little bit and think outside the box, you're able to find ways that certain, parts of psychology can be implemented into SEO really easily, and it makes a world of difference.
So what would be an example of one or two areas within SEO that you can implement this? I mean, for instance, are we talking about things like page titles and meta descriptions to encourage click-throughs, or is it only something that can happen actually once people hit the site itself?
Oh gosh, there's so many different ways that you can use it. Julia Panozzo, who did a really great talk at Brighton SEO on negativity bias, she showed that basically if you use negative words and stuff in the titles and meta descriptions, people are more likely to click through because people react more to negative stimuli. And it's not just that as well. When you're writing content, people's biases come into play. There's another thing as well about, mindset, fixed and growth mindset. People don't realize that depending on if you have a fixed or a growth mindset, you're going to react differently to different ad copy and different copy on your website. So say if you're a luxury brand, you're probably going to be targeting people with a fixed mindset who use items to, boost their status. So by creating content that's geared up for these kind of people and their wants and wishes and motivations in life, you're able to, hit them right in the feels, basically, and get them to do what you want.
It feels like paid search knows these principles more than SEO, because I would imagine that paid search professionals study copywriting books, advertising books, what works. Your example of perhaps a negative word in there could actually assist with negative targeting, of course, as well, within in paid search as well. I guess perhaps one of the reasons why SEOs haven't done this as much in the past is they've been very keyword focused and tried to rank their page for phrases associated with the keyword that they're attempting to target. And perhaps they felt that traditional copywriting incorporates too many other elements that don't really assist with SEO. How would you counter that?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, from my experience with SEO, I've seen that people have been too technical focused and forgot that you kind of need, no matter, even if you have like the best technical website, if you don't have content, you're not going to rank. So there's either been that kind of issue, or like you said, people have just seen content as this thing that they can just push out and rank and then just hope for the best. Whereas, if you want to get results in SEO, you don't want to drive people to the site. You want them to take an action. You want them to, make a purchase. You want them to fill in a form. Want them to do what you want, really. And to do that, you need decent copy and you need decent content. So this is where things like psychology and good copywriting are going to go hand in hand. And even when it comes to keywords and stuff, you can learn so much from different keywords, because the way certain keywords are phrased, you can tell that people are biased on certain things. I did a talk about it at Brighton SEO, where, for example, if you take two keywords that are similar, so is the ADHD caused by sugar? You put that into Google, and because you said, is ADHD caused by sugar, Google will feed you back information that confirms your existing belief and says, yes, ADHD is caused by sugar. Whereas if you put ADHD not caused by sugar, it will feed you back different information. So that's confirmation bias. But, even that sort of thing, psychology impacts keywords. It's everywhere. We can't escape it. We just need to learn to embrace it, really.
As an aside, do you think Google should do a better job of bringing up alternative arguments?
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, totally. I think that what Google is doing is actually pretty dangerous, because I know that their whole mission is, to provide the best search experience for searchers. But there are going to be times when people are wrong, and confirmation bias is leading to the spread of misinformation. It's causing so many different, issues in the world, and polarization, God, all of this kind of stuff that, Google need to be doing a better job. Like, as SEOs, by understanding the SERPs and understanding the keywords, we can do our bit to fight against misinformation, but it's not our responsibility. Google should be doing it.
Yeah, it's difficult for users to actually determine whether they're reading misinformation or the facts, because certainly even using AI nowadays, things are presented as facts, but often that isn't the case.
Definitely. I mean, we're all guilty of looking at a featured snippet and just taking it at face value and then going on and looking for something else. But what if that featured snippet is actually wrong? What if it, contains false information, and then that spreads? People put it on social media, it can spread like a wildfire.
So you also talked about the impact of mindset and buyer behavior, and I guess Google understands the whole user journey a little bit better nowadays, and tries to use some of those signals within ranking. So what are one or two things that you could advise publishers to include on web pages to assist with mindset and really resonating with the user to complete that user journey?
Yeah, so I think what you need to do at the beginning is kind of understand a little bit more about kind of what the different mindsets entail. So, for example, when we're talking about marketing to fixed mindset people, they are traditionally looking for things that are going to be easy to obtain. So they want a product that's, say, easy weight loss, something like that, or something that's going to improve their status symbol and how they're seen amongst other people. So, luxury bags, luxury cars. Whereas if you're dealing with, for example, growth mindset people, say you have like a learning platform or something, these people are going to be willing to put the effort in. So you need to, focus your messaging to, if you do XYZ 5 times a day, you're going to be able to achieve this by putting some effort in. So you really need to understand what sort of users you got, what sort of, look at psychographics rather than demographics. And then based on what you think people's mindset is going to be, go that route.
One of the challenges, though, with SEO is that it's difficult sometimes to market, to position your content to multiple audiences, because sometimes there's only one opportunity to rank for a keyword phrase. And if you have different mindsets reading the same piece of content, then it's going to appeal to some people and not to so many. Do you tend to advise on publishing different pages to different mindsets, or is it better just to cater towards the majority?
So when it comes to mindsets, I think what you need to do is look at what kind of brand you are and what sort of, traditionally what sort of mindset folk are going to come to you, and then focus on that. There are ways to kind of keep things neutral by having a mix of messages. So you can always go that route, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing separate things because that will confuse your message and who you want to target. However, might be going off on a little bit of a tangent, but when it comes to, your target audience, and if you're a big multinational company targeting loads of different people, this is when you can start looking into personality traits and trying to find out what sort of personality traits your target audience have, and then have a range of different messages targeted to people with different personality traits that will resonate with them more.
Or potentially even multiple brands targeting different personality traits.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you could go so deep with the whole personality trait targeting and stuff. I wouldn't recommend it for like small companies because you're not going to have so much data and stuff like that. And then sometimes, it can kind of verge on, should you do it, should you not? But large companies who have large data sets who are able to, invest in looking into this kind of stuff, it's worth it.
So how would you summarize maybe a few steps that SEOs can take to implement the use of psychology, or the better use of psychology in their day-to-day activities?
Yep, I'd say start at the beginning and read some of the good books like you suggested, taking a look at copywriting books, maybe some of the older ones where, from like Ogilvy or some of the large copywriting giants who, didn't have access to AI and stuff like that, who had to do it the hard way. Then I would say take a look at things like cognitive biases, because they're quite simple for everybody to understand and implement in their day-to-day work. And then I would start diving a bit deeper into individual parts of psychology, depending on what you want to do. It's kind of hard as well to know which kind of resources. The best tip I would say is make sure that the people you're reading actually have, experience and qualifications in psychology. So you're not learning from somebody who has decided that they're a psychology expert, because unfortunately that happens a lot. And also don't be afraid to look at Google Scholar as well, because there are an awful lot of studies on online search and they're really good.
And is this something that an SEO should just embrace by themselves, or is it much better to have conversations about this with other marketing channels?
Oh, I would definitely say talk to other marketing channels about this rather than doing it by themselves, because chances are, people in different departments, like content department stuff, are already doing the basic work of this. So speak to people, and also, have conversations outside the world of, SEO as well, so that you can learn from different areas.
If an SEO is struggling for time, what should they stop doing right now so they can spend more time doing what you suggest in 2025?
I'd say stop the busy work. If you look on LinkedIn, there's so many things about, I have to do XYZ, or I have to do these massive, audits that nobody's going to read, and stuff like that. Stop with the busy work. Stop doing what you think you have to do, and basically optimize your time so that you're doing what works, not what you think you need to do in order for it to work. And then schedule some, personal development time, because we're always learning, no matter how senior we are, to learn some new skills like this.
How do you know if the busy work is actually busy work that's productive or not?
Does it get you any results, or does it just lead to kind of hours spent doing something that doesn't really get you many results, or just ends up in countless meetings? The sort of stuff that I'm talking about, the meetings that could have been emails, or the presentations that could have took months but could have actually, taken a day.
Sarah Presch is Digital Marketing Director at Dragon Metrics, and you can find her over at dragonmetrics.com. Sarah, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2025.
Thank you.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2025, the book, over at SEOin2025.com.